Hey, in this video I want to talk about CCing and dealing with Zhaitan Fear as healed Scourge for Harvest Temple CM. First, let's talk about CC. Thanks to the recent patch giving swiftness to Warhorn 5, party-wide swiftness, we can now run other relics than Relic of Fevi. In particular, the Relic of the Midnight King allows us to grant Might and Fury when we use CC skills. This also means that we can drop Desiccate and we have an additional utility slot. Specifically for Harvest Temple CM, I like to run Spectral Grasp. Spectral Grasp is useful because in HTCM we can't run Flesh Golem because it might mess up with the invisibility part that is very specific to Harvest Temple CM. Spectral Grasp can do a lot of breakbar damage with proper use, so let's have a look. The skill has a range of 1200 and targets up to 5 enemies, shooting out projectiles and pulling them to you. These projectiles can be body blocked, meaning that if another hitbox is in the way, this hitbox will be hit instead of the original target. Consequently, if you stand inside a hitbox but you have multiple targets within that 1200 range, all of the created projectiles will hit the target you are standing in. This can be used to our advantage for CCing the big orbs in Harvest Temple CM. So here we can see Orb 1. Notice I'm staying close to the orb, but not inside the hitbox. This means that I'm close enough to get quickly into the hitbox for CCing, while not constantly getting damage from the ticking damage inside the orb hitbox. Once the breakbar is active, I dip into the hitbox and use Spectral Grasp. Looking at arc DPS or the corresponding combat log, you can see that using only Spectral Grasp was immediately 600 CC. Alongside Spectral Grasp, always use F4, which is 1 second of fear or up to 100 additional CC. If the CC is not done after using Spectral Grasp, use your Torch 5 and Warhorn 4 as well. Warhorn 5 is 100 CC and 1 second of fear, and Torch 5 is 200 CC. Altogether, this means that you can do more than 1000 CC without having to run Flesh Golem and thereby effectively eliminating the CC weakness that Heal Scourge has without Flesh Golem. The next example we're looking at is the second orb. For this you have to be careful about the poison, but as long as you're waiting outside and just quickly dipping into the hitbox for CC, it should be fine, at least according to my experience. In any case, you can be ready to dodge back out quickly if needed. Similarly to before, Spectral Grasp did 600 CC. The reason the CC will always be somewhat good with Spectral Grasp is that around the orbs there are always the spawn locations of crabs. Whenever the orb hits a white circle, crabs will spawn from these spawn locations. So even if all crabs and snipers are killed before the orb hits the final white circle, you will have at least 3 targets for Spectral Grasp, 2 newly spawned crabs and the orb itself, making it at least 450 CC. As a final example with the third orb, but everything has been said already, so just repeat the same thing, walk alongside the orb, go into the hitbox, press Spectral Grasp and win. Finally, for intermissions, always try and save your Warhorn 4 and be sure to be on that weapon set for AoE CC, since Torch 5 is only single target CC and not AoE. On top of that, you can always use F4 for additional fear. Next, let's have a look at how to deal with Zhaitan Fear. So in order to cleanse conditions while being feared, we can use Barrier Application, which, thanks to the trait Abrasive Grit, cleanses a condition whenever we give Barrier. This is mainly with F3, Sand Cascade, and F5, Sandstorm Shroud. You also have other sources of Barrier, but those two are not tied to a cast time and we cannot cast any spells while being feared. Other than that, we also have F2, which directly cleanses conditions, or rather converts conditions to boons. The downside of Shade skills is that specifically F2 and F3 only have a free target cap and only 180 range. This means that when you don't have a shade around or when your party is outside the range of your shade, you cannot cleanse all of your allies in your sub. Although you count as a shade yourself, when you press one of those buttons, F2 or F3, you first target yourself and then 2 additional allies. So 2 other allies in your sub will not be cleansed if they are outside of an additional shade. In practice, this can happen if you press your buttons too late and if your allies are then outside of your shade's range because they are feared away. This is why timing is important, to which I will come back in a second. F5, on the other hand, has two different parts to it. First of all, it has 300 range instead of only 180, which is already a big plus. Second, it pulses 3 times and then detonates for a large amount of barrier. The pulsing part that happens first hits 5 allies, but only around you and not from shades, while the other detonation part functions like other shade skills, hitting only 3 targets, but from all of your shades. This means that the second important way to consistently deal with Zhaitan Fear is to save your F5 for the fear, because if you mistime your F2 or F3 and your allies are feared away, you will pulse additional barrier from yourself within a 300 radius and targeting your whole party to cleanse them, thanks to the pulsing part targeting 5 allies. Finally, let's look at some actual footage. After the transition from Mordremoth, you can basically press all of your buttons, so use all of your shade skills because they will be ready for the fear again. When you come back from the first green, don't use your F5, use only your F3 because it will be ready again for the fear. As usual, blink out with Sandswell and mentally prepare for the Zhaitan sequence. Take the portal back and wait until the fear animation has surpassed the red line of the hitbox, and then press your F3, F2 and F5. This way, timing wise, the cleanses will hit shortly after the fear appears, and the F5 makes sure that if for some reason F2 or F3 was mistimed, you will still cleanse your allies. If you're unsure and you want to stay on the very safe side, then you can just forego other usage of F5 and save it for the fear, like I did in this POV. Cooldown wise, you can technically use it after coming back from the green if you use it immediately. It will only be ready immediately before the fear again though. So again, if you want to play it very safe, just save your F5.